Welcome back. It's Smoking and Toastin'. This is the radio program that is all about craft beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. We are brought to you by my good friends and fellow drinking compatriots at B&B Butchers and Restaurant, which is at 1814 Washington Ave in Houston, and in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth. I think I told this story, but had gone there to have dinner with my wife and mentioned, not knowing if it would help the service or not, but mentioned to the waiter that I was friends with Jeremiah Butler. And he says, "Oh, Jeremiah," he goes, "Yeah, he and I went out for a drink the other night." And I was like, "You are lying."
Right?
Jeremiah doesn't go out for a drink. I know him too well.
There's more than
more to that. So, all right. So this is going to be of interest, I think, to you, Michael, and would be of interest to Jeremiah as well. There's a scientists and engineers in Scotland, of course, have come up with an artificial tongue that is made largely of gold and aluminum, which is kind of like my first apartment.
Sounds expensive.
It's an artificial tongue that can taste subtle differences in whiskey. And here's why they're doing this. It's not so it can be a reviewer or something like that. It's designed to help cut down on the trade of counterfeit alcohol. It's a tiny taster that exploits the optical properties of gold and aluminum in order to test the spirits. I know that's
pretty bizarre.
Yeah, it sounds bizarre. So here's what they say. Submicroscopic slices of metal arranged in a checkerboard pattern act as taste buds, about 500 times smaller than our taste buds on our tongues, right? And this is all happening on this new artificial tongue that has been built at the University of Glasgow. Don't you know the University of Glasgow is awesome?
It's got to be an interesting place.
It's got to be an interesting place. Yeah. Researchers report samples of single malt scotch from Glenfiddich, Glenmarnock, and Lafroig over this device, measuring how the elements absorb light when they're submerged in the whiskey. The process, which scientists call, and this sounds like a Star Trek term, plasmonic resonance.
Plasmonic resonance.
Captain, the plasmonic resonance is affecting the dilithium crystals.
Damn it, Cruz. I'm a doctor, not a plasmonic resonance reader.
It's allowed the team to identify different types of spirits with this plasmonic resonance. And they boast nearly 100% accuracy.
Wow.
So they're able to tell the distinctions between distilled drinks and identify the same whiskey at age 12, age 15, at age 18 years.
Well, this is all in regards to I think it's the Chinese market is
right. They're struggling with contraband and with fake fake whiskeys. Happens with cigars all the time too.
Right,
you know?
wine, all of it.
They call it an artificial tongue because it reacts similarly to a human tongue, but it can't identify the individual chemicals that make coffee taste different to apple juice, but it can easily tell the difference between these complex chemical mixtures. So the artificial tongue is artificial but real.
That's
cool.
Madness.
Yeah, it is madness, isn't it?
What does one of those cost?
Oh, God.
Could you even know? There's probably not even a price on this thing.
But if you think about it, if you are...
but there's hope for the future if you ever fall down and break your tongue.
Right. Then I want one of them artificial...
if you ever need a tongue transplant.
Yeah. Where's he in? He's going to the University of Glasgow for a couple of months. He'll be back. So I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting.
Now, okay, so let's shift gears here a little bit and talk about vermouth, because my impression, okay, before, and we haven't opened these bottles to taste yet, but my impression would be that vermouth is a dry and not necessarily, I would expect it to be very aromatic, but not necessarily something that would have as pleasing an effect on the tongue and the palate as some other spirits, like, for example, the whiskey, the bourbon that we just had, because I think of it more as something that you use to offset other flavors and create interesting combinations,
right,
in like a great martini or something like that. So tell me why I am not appreciating the full picture of vermouth.
Well, let's start with it's not your fault.
Okay.
Okay. We had
Hear
this,
that, Ian? It's not my fault.
I'm not on board with this already.
Okay. All right.
It
love
is your
this.
fault. Everything's your fault. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But the American public, we had a small run of about 13 years where we were dry, and in that time, right before, we had this amazing, renaissance of cocktails that was happening, a golden age of cocktails,
Right.
20s, 30s.
Right.
I should say before that.
No, but you're right. Cocktails were a big,
They were a thing.
big deal. Yeah.
If you know the history of why an old fashioned is an old fashioned, then that's in regards to that. Now, fast forward through Prohibition, everything kind of goes away. I mean, distilleries go out of business. Some wineries shut down. There's a lot happening in the United States. So our kind of transition out of cocktails into drinking Amaros, Vermouths, and all that was dated. I mean, we didn't do it. And when we got through Prohibition, we just started drinking again, beer, whiskey.
Anything we could get our hands on.
Anything we could get our hands on, exactly.
You're absolutely right,
and,
yeah.
So that kind of
And there was some really awful beer and spirits consumed during
Correct.
Prohibition.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Bathtub
It was
gins
Like,
and so
it's like
forth.
your
Bathtub gin sounds so delicious.
Yeah.
like your worst nightmare
That
buddy
needs a little
who
more juniper there, buddy.
Yeah, your worst nightmare buddy who does home brewing, right? I'm not talking about the ones who know what they're doing. I'm talking about the guy
ones
who's
that
like,
don't.
Just
hey,
an FYI,
taste my IPA.
just an FYI, backyard distilling does not smell good.
Yeah. Oh, good to know. Good to know.
This is good to know.
So after Prohibition, we began to open up to pretty much
Drinking.
all kinds of things because drinking was allowed again, right?
Exactly. Now, you go back in Europe, I mean, drinking Amaros, Vermouths, aperitifs, digestifs, that's a thing.
Sure.
It's part of the culture of going out
Absolutely.
and eating and drinking. But so our idea of vermouth
Grappas.
is, grappas.
Yeah.
Our idea of vermouth is very limited because our exposure is not
As a
been
mixer.
there. Right. Now we can thank, Carpano Antica that came out, not came out, but kind of reinvigorated this idea of what a sweet vermouth should be. They really did a good job of that. And as such, we have seen this influx of vermouths and Amaros come into the market. Now, one of the cool things about, the family that I work for is, I mentioned earlier, they came up from Italy, early 1900s. Mario learned to make wine from his dad and his uncle. And along with his brother, they were taught how to make vermouth. So the family had their own vermouth recipe. And when they came over to the States, they brought their knowledge of winemaking and vermouth. And
Do you know what the process for fortifying wine actually is?
oh yeah, we'll get into it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So when that happened, and he came over and he was a bartender, and he was bartending during Prohibition and speakeasies. He was making this stuff. You couldn't go out and buy it.
Right.
So after Prohibition ended, he became a bartender at the Waldorf Astoria and the Barbizon Plaza Hotel.
Nice.
And, that was what he was doing. And then
Sure.
he uprooted his family and moved them out to Napa in 1946, 1947, which
And invested the money in the winery.
Yeah. So you go into 1950s, they actually started producing their vermouth, and it was called Trincheri's vermouth. They produced that all the way up until the 1980s, but stopped because of the explosion of Sutter Home White Zinfandel, and they needed all the vats they could possibly
Needed
get their
everything
hands
to
on.
get the
Right.
demand.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So that really went dormant for them. One of the things that happened in the Trinchero family was during the 1960s, they would celebrate $100 cash days with Mario's favorite drink, which was a perfect martini. And they would make it with the family vermouth and gin, and that's what they would have in celebration of it.
Nice.
But how this really came
Notice
back...
you said the perfect martini.
You
with
don't
gin.
start with me. Don't start
I'm
with
just
me.
pointing that out.
Yeah,
Don't start with
I'm
me.
with him, just an
Yeah.
FYI. So
I like a gin martini. I just, I like vodka for the same reason I like tofu.
Doesn't taste like anything.
That's right.
Tastes like whatever you put in
You
it.
can whip it up any way you want to.
It's weird that you said you like tofu. Anyway.
Barbecue tofu is probably his favorite.
If you haven't had tofu that you've liked, then you haven't had good tofu. Because it's just like vodka.
Tofu
It can be
is a sponge.
yes, it can be absolutely tasteless and bland, or in the right hands.
I mean, you can make
amazing.
tofu taste like chicken,
Yes,
but you know what tastes like chicken?
chicken.
Chicken.
Okay, but in the right hands, a chef can make tofu taste like something that's more than just a meat or a spice, or you see what I'm saying? I mean, think of someone who makes a great sauce. Like tofu can be thought of in the same way. Like that sauce is more than just the meat flavor or the vegetable flavor or the cream flavor that goes into the sauce if it's a great sauce.
You guys should have a talk show just on tofu.
I think we're digressing here.
I think we are.
Did you see me just light them up?
Yeah.
Oh my God, will you look? Everyone has dropped off of Facebook. They're all gone. Sorry.
You're all good.
I guess we'll just drink some vermouth now. So
We should. But, really our understanding of vermouth.
Chris is asking where the Amador is. I'm just going to hold that up there and say we're having some, actually.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
With vermouth, I mean, we all got the jokes, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
I was a bartender for a long time, and a lot of times, somebody asked for a martini, you know, just a touch of vermouth. The joke was you touch the glass to the bottle,
exactly,
wave it over the top.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And really, vermouth, dry vermouth in particular, was that green bottle of M&R that sat on the back that was never refrigerated. That was
The top would get a little crusty.
Exactly.
Right.
So, I mean, in all actuality, what you're smelling is, this is what dry vermouth should be. I mean,
well, it's no Malort, I'll tell you that.
It smells really, actually, very rich.
It does. It smells very
fruity.
I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but it smells kind of complex and rich. Yes.
I don't know if complex is the right word, but intense, definitely
intense. Yes, definitely. Well, this is
and rich, and
this vermouth is made from French Colombard, which is a varietal, white varietal.
Right.
And we get it off the Bullfrog Vineyard in Central Coast that the Trinchero family owns. And we take that up to Napa, and it's got 13 different herbs and botanicals in it that are cold macerated for 45 to 90 days. And then when you fortify it, we fortify this with dry pale sherry. So that is what's going to add that complex body to it.
So it starts out as wine. And then you add the botanicals and the flavorings to it,
Yep.
and then sherry, you said, is the
Sherry
final
is what
complement.
fortifies
Okay,
it, right. So in order for vermouth to be vermouth, you have to have it made with Artemisia, or flavored with Artemisia, Roman wormwood. One of the things that's very different about our vermouth is that we also use cinchona bark. Now, the area that the Trincheros are from in Italy, quinatas were a big thing, and for quinatas, cinchona bark is the main ingredient. So they learned to almost create a hybrid vermouth in a way. But 13 different herbs and botanicals. You're looking at, orris root, cinnamon, lemon peel, tansy herb, yarrow flower. There's a lot going into this, a lot of complexity. This is something that, for me, I drink this on the rocks with a twist of lemon. And
interesting.
Summertime, it's the fact that
this is nothing like what I expected.
Exactly.
Absolutely
Exactly.
right. Absolutely right.
Exactly.
Like, this is good. It's not anything like what I expected.
I want to sit and just sip on this while I watch a movie or something. You know what I mean? Like it has that sort of vibe to it to me. Like I would have never thought I would want it straight up.
Is this something you would ever add bubbly to?
So I mean, we could we do cocktails with it with prosecco.
Yeah. I mean,
bubbly works fine with it. I mean,
I kind of picture this, and I'm not all that into making cocktails just because I'm terrible at it. But I kind of picture this on ice, like you said, with just a little bit of bubbly in it, just to give it a little.
Even with
suds.
some mineral water,
Yep.
a Topo Chico would be good. I think with a good fizzy water.
But you know what? Straight like this is.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I just never would have
Yeah,
expected this.
that's what I'm saying. I would
love
love to pour a little glass of this and just kind of settle in to watch a movie or an episode of a show or something.
There's a really interesting kind of grapeness to this.
Yes, but it's not grapey, but it has a certain grape.
right. Well,
to it.
French Colombard in general is considered a blending varietal. It tends to give a guava taste to wine, and which I pick up out of this vermouth a lot. But that's that. When we think of dry, we think of this very astringent burn, medicinal in a bad way.
It's not even as dry as a wine.
Correct.
Like a red wine would leave
Correct.
more dryness on the palate than this does. This is actually it's actually pretty. I
Well-
always want to use the word round.
Absolutely. I think
you know,
round, robust are
Yeah.
two good words for it.
There's a little kind of a dried fruit finish on this.
Mhm.
Yeah, like dried raisin.
Yeah, that's because I kept on the retro hail. I was like, "There's something in there that I recognize," and you nailed it.
Yeah.
I was like, "What is that? I know it."
So this is completely different from what I think either of our expectations would have
I had
been.
no idea,
Yeah.
and it's
Fascinating.
kind of delicious, actually.
Yeah, kind of. So this is. Tell us again about the specific one we're tasting here.
So this is the Trincheri dry vermouth.
Okay.
French Colombard, fortified with dry pale sherry, 13 different herbs and botanicals, the two main being Artemisia, or what's known as Roman wormwood,
Yeah.
and cinchona bark.
Wow.
That wormwood leaves a little astringency in the palate.
Right.
Is that like the dryness that we speak? A lot of that, yeah.
More than likely.
What is something like this comparable to from a proof standpoint?
Well, this is 17.5 proof, so it's
Okay.
it's a higher wine, it's fortified wine. I would say, proof wise, probably a Viognier, a white varietal Viognier is
Okay.
usually up near 16, 17%.
And wine's at like 12%, right?
Yeah, 12 to 13.
Usually around 12%. Most beers come in between 4.5 to 6.5, unless they're really big beers.
Yeah.
And then most liqueurs are in the 20,
Yeah. Yeah.
25-ish%, something.
Well,
like
this
that.
is really fascinating. Now, what is a bottle of this retail for? What's
So
your
this
average?
will retail $24.99. So when y'all came to the whiskey Houston Whiskey Social, where we had this, we only had it for a couple months. So Village Liquor right now is carrying it. There's some spots in Austin that are carrying it. South of Mar Wine and Spirits, Dawn's Liquor in Cedar Park. So really the push is our on-premise kind of awareness to this with bartenders, bar staff, really getting it out there for people to taste. Because to your point, vermouth is not something that people really think to go and have a critical eye
Right.
on
I
at all.
Right.
until
When-
this day, I never would have gone. I would like a glass of vermouth.
Right,
But
right.
this is delicious.
It really
This
is.
is what vermouth tastes like.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know why I expected it to be something with like either kind of sickly, sticky, kind of sweet.
Well, I think
Or-
that's what you get out of a lot of the sweet vermouths, and when we get into our Rosso, I'll talk about that. There is a lot of it seems like residual sugar that's left in vermouths to make it a tolerable.
Sweeter, more palatable.
Sweeter,
Yeah.
more palatable. Yep, absolutely.
Cover it with sugar.
Well, we will get to that definitely, and I'm really interested in tasting the sweet versus this, and seeing what the differences are in between those. Plus, we still have more to come. As a matter of fact, and I don't know how this is going to go from a palate standpoint after the vermouth, but we do have the IPA called Pie Assassin from Anchorage Brewing that we are
Pie
going to be
Assassin.
trying. Pie Assassin. So that's going to be coming up next. Plus, I don't know if we're going to have time for this. 10 points of cigar lounge etiquette. These are really good, and I have a reason for wanting. We've done cigar lounge etiquette before, Ian, but there's a reason I wanted to bring this back around.
Have I been breaking those?
No, it's not you. It's not you. Is
it you?
I had an experience. That's all, and I, so we'll come back to that, and we'll come back to more vermouth and our special guest Michael Gallagher when we continue. It's Smoking and Toasting, show number 152, and we'll be right back.